Shadow work is one of those spaces I can see why people kind of shy away from and don't necessarily like. Because when you just start doing shadow work, you'll have a lot of moments where you are confronted with parts of yourself that you don't necessarily identify with. Almost like constant moments of, oh my God, is this me? It's me. It's me. Hey guys, my name is Tawana Antoinette. Welcome back to my channel where we discuss spiritual education. Today we are going to talk about shadow work. So what is the shadow? The shadow is a psychological term developed by Carl Jung, and it's in a nutshell the dark side of ourselves. It's the parts of us that we identify as bad, negative. It's often called the disowned self. The idea is that we don't want to claim those parts of ourselves because when you really think about it, we've been programmed since childhood to be rewarded for good behavior and to be punished for bad behavior or negativity. And so as you grow up, you internalize that programming and you start to over-identify with the parts of the self that you consider good and abandon the parts of the self that you do not necessarily want to identify with and that you consider bad. It's important to note that everyone has a shadow self. Everyone has a light side and a dark side if you want to consider it in that way. But the shadow cannot be eliminated, and even if it's not acknowledged, that doesn't mean that we get rid of it. It simply just means that it will be repressed in or unconscious programming, and when we are not conscious of something, then we play that programming out without being aware of it. So that then takes us to what is shadow work. So shadow work is a process of working with our shadow selves, and we work with our shadow selves to shed light on those unconscious areas, to bring them into our awareness and to integrate them to create a whole perspective, a whole human perspective. Instead of good and bad, we embrace the light and the dark to create a fullness of understanding of self and to also help us in our relationships with other people and help us with personal development in general. So why the need for shadow work? Why do we want to shed light on these areas of our unconscious programming? Well, what is the reason? Several reasons, actually. And the first one is when you think about your experience as a human being, knowing that every human being has a light aspect of the self and a dark aspect of the self, positive attributes, negative attributes. When we start to over-identify with the positive attributes or the good qualities, and we start to dissociate from the bad qualities or reject that aspect of ourselves, then we start to reject that aspect of ourselves in other people as well. So we don't like this thing and we refuse to acknowledge it in the self, and then when that thing shows itself in someone else, we reject them as well, and that's how projections are born. That's why it's my personal belief and a part of my spiritual practice to always examine what it is that I don't like about a person and examine if that very thing lives within me. An example of this that I've actually seen this pretty often too. Let's say we have person A and person B. Person A is a fire sign, and so person A is very confident, bold, assertive, does not care how they come off to others, is okay putting themselves out there. And then let's just say we have person B who may be a water sign. They're more emotional, not necessarily fiery by nature, and so they perceive person A to be arrogant, overly confident, talks too much. It could be said that person B has not accepted that aspect of self-confidence within themselves. They have not stepped into that boldness, that assertiveness. And so because they reject those aspects of themselves, then that is an unconscious rejection of those things in person A as well. It's not to say that person A isn't overly confident or arrogant. It's just to say that if arrogance or self-confidence was not a part of a person B's shadow, then it would not bother them so much to see that in person A. You know what that is? That's basically the ego defending itself, like the ego defending to the death this good image, like, I'm a good person, I'm such a good person, I am, trust me, believe me, I'm good. That's why when you learn about projections, it's easier to not take things personally. Now, we can go through life like this, but the problem with that is if we do, everything will always be someone else's fault. It will always be about someone else and never really about us. We will never have that awareness because we are unconscious of our shadow. On top of self-awareness, the reasons why we want to do shadow work include better relationships with other people, because then we get to understand what is ours and what is theirs. We get to understand how to navigate dynamics with other people because we take greater responsibilities for our parts, and we are also able to identify in others their parts. So we limit our projections on other people, and we're able to spot when other people are throwing their projections onto us. Shadow work can also help with our physical and emotional health. And the reason for that is everything is basically energy. And with everything being energy, that means that all of those things that we identify as bad, all of those aspects of the self that we don't want to claim, we want to disown, we want to disassociate from, we store them in our unconscious. And storing those things in our unconscious, it can breed things like fear, it can breed things like shame, guilt. And when we're operating in those low vibrational energies, those can create blockages for us, whether that be physical ailments, sicknesses, emotional blockages in our relationships. They can manifest in many ways. And so doing shadow work brings a healing to your emotional life and to your physical life. Another aspect of shadow work that I personally love is that it's so empowering. And the reason why I say it's empowering is because integrating both aspects of yourself, the good and the bad, puts you in a position of not being able to be swayed by guilt or shame or fear. No one can tell you about yourself because you are already doing the work to bring those aspects that you love and that you hate into your awareness to create a more integrated human experience. You kind of start to look at yourself from a more realistic perspective. I have these great attributes and I also have these negative attributes. And in that recognition, that is where acceptance is born and grace for the human journey. And that eventually turns into acceptance of others and extending that same grace to other people who are going through their own human experience as well. So these are some tips that you can use for your own shadow work. Number one is watch your emotional reactions. Carl Jung said that everything that irritates us about others can lead to an understanding of ourselves. And we basically spoke about that earlier in the video, but when you start to carefully evaluate your emotional reactions, then you can start to see where you are projecting. And in that identification of your projections, that's where you can shed light on what areas of yourself need a little bit more love. I often like to think about my shadow as areas of myself that I need to love more. 2, do not judge yourself. Shadow work is a lifelong process. We will always have a shadow. I don't personally believe that anyone will be done doing shadow work in this lifetime, because you're a human being. And as we stated before, we have light and we have darkness. And that's something that we will constantly be evolving and integrating, and it just doesn't stop. So why judge yourself for being that which you are, a human? When you identify something, grant yourself patience and give yourself some compassion. Commit to healing this thing, commit to doing the work to evaluate where this thing came from. But just be mindful not to put any limiting beliefs onto that. Like, I feel guilty, I feel bad, I feel ashamed. None of that. Another tip that I find useful is asking why. Ask yourself why. Create an investigative mind always. Why? Why do I feel this way? What's the reason? Challenge the ego, because that's when you start to change the programming and show your ego that it is not in control, because then you are challenging the belief system that you have held for such a long time. And in that, I consider that a breaking down of the ego, because then you are more open to things like changing. With that self-evaluation, you are becoming more aware of unconscious programming that you've had. And as a result, the ego has less of a strong hold on you as you continue to do this investigative work. The best part about this is it's you versus you. You're not doing this with somebody else. You're having this self-talk completely by yourself. Another tip is meditating. Of course, you guys know I will always recommend meditating. Meditation, I think, saved my life, saved my sanity, saved my mental health, keeps saving my mental health. So I will always recommend meditation, because to me, meditation is where I come in contact with my higher self. And that's where I'm able to step outside of the limiting human thoughts that I have to receive higher knowledge. And in that higher knowledge and in that communing with my higher self, I can see things from a different perspective, and I can see myself outside of this human experience as a soul. And what do souls come in this incarnation to do? To grow, to mature. I don't feel a personal attack. I don't feel, it's like I'm not taking the human journey personally, because I'm remembering who I am. And as a result of remembering who I am at a soul level, then it doesn't make it hard or personal to do the work. I just consider it as, hey, I came here to grow up. I came here for a little bit more maturity. So this is a part of that. So those are a few tips for doing shadow work. Of course, there are many more tips online, so feel free to do additional research and do what's best for you. But ultimately, it really just comes down to an integration of these good aspects of ourselves and these not so good aspects of ourselves. And I take it even a step further to say completely eradicating this good versus bad belief that we have as it pertains to our human experience that we've been programmed to replay since childhood. Because really there's no good versus bad. We have light, we have dark, and we need them both to enjoy a full spectrum experience and human journey, and also to accept that in others as well. So I hope this video helped you. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe. If you'd like to learn more spiritual education with me, my Patreon link is down below. And if you want to follow me on social media, it's at Tawana Antoinette everywhere. So follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, whatever you're into. That information is also down below. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys.